Hello guys, I'm Tom, and today we're going to find out who Morgan Gillory really is. One of the most fascinating, complex, and emotionally powerful characters in this story is, without a doubt, Morgan Gillory. For some, she's just a brilliant detective with an almost supernatural instinct for solving crimes. For others, she's a devoted mother struggling to keep her world from falling apart, even as everything around her crumbles. But Morgan is not just another investigator. She's the key piece in a game where the enemy never reveals their face, where every move could cost a life, even her own. From mysterious disappearances, deadly puzzles, and twisted games designed by deranged minds, to dark secrets from the past that threaten to destroy everything she loves. Morgan has faced more than any person should have to endure. But who is this woman really? What drives her to keep going when her own life is constantly at risk? And what hides behind that determined gaze that refuses to look away from the darkness? That's why in this video, I'll tell you Morgan's story in detail. Her personal life, her past, her skills as a detective, her darkest moments, and how she's managed to stay on her feet while the game becomes increasingly dangerous. It all begins when a woman shows up at the police station to do janitorial work and quickly detects irregularities in a homicide investigation. She notices that the police have made a mistake by labeling Lynette Acosta, the missing wife of the victim, as the prime suspect. Without hesitation, she changes the tag on the evidence board, reclassifying Lynetta from suspect to victim. The next day, Detective Karadek is furious to discover someone has tampered with the board. Security footage identifies the woman as Morgan, who is immediately brought in for questioning. Calmly, Morgan lays out her findings. In the photos from the crime scene, Lynette's hair is stuck to the furniture with some kind of adhesive, indicating that she was restrained against her will before being killed. This suggests the involvement of a third party, someone who held Lynette captive prior to the murder. As the police follow up on this theory, Morgan is briefly detained. However, after new footage emerges that supports her claim, she's released. The video shows a woman at the crime scene, but she denies being there the day of the murder, claiming instead that she was assaulted by one of the victim's clients. The police, considering the possibility that this woman is the third party Morgan mentioned, begin investigating her. Upon leaving, Morgan points out a critical flaw in the surveillance footage. It's been manipulated. She explains that the video doesn't match the day of the murder by analyzing the wind direction in summer. In summer, winds blow from the south, but in autumn they shift to the north. The video shows wind blowing from south to north, while the wind on the actual day came from the north, indicating the footage is at least 7 months old. Morgan confirms her theory by referencing a church in the background that faces east, using it as a geographical marker. An officer checks the information and confirms that Morgan is right. Meanwhile, Karadek meets with Costa's daughter, who reveals that her mother had received a disturbing letter from someone named Sarah. That letter caused tension between Lynette and her husband, prompting Lynette to confide in her sister. The police decide to visit Lynette's sister to gather more information. Selena, the sister, suggests that Morgan might be involved, though she acknowledges the consultant's intuition. The daughter, having developed trust in Morgan, shares the last photos her mother sent before disappearing. At the sister's house, Morgan begins interrogating her immediately, but is unconvinced by her answers. Karadek, frustrated by Morgan's lack of sensitivity toward a grieving relative, orders her to wait in the car, prompting Morgan to leave in anger. Later, Karadek visits Lynette Acosta's law firm, seeking the letter from Sarah, but the firm refuses to hand it over without a court order. While Karadek is in the bathroom, Morgan unexpectedly shows up and hands him the letter, revealing that she had disguised herself as a cleaning lady and snuck into Lynette's office to retrieve it. The letter reveals that Sarah was involved in a high-profile assault case against a client named Diamond, whom Lynette had been defending. Sarah had been attacked by Diamond, just like the woman in the video, and was seeking Lynette's help to sue him. Morgan concludes that Diamond may have murdered Lynette to stop the case from going forward, especially if Lynette had started to question her defense of him. Karadec, irritated, points out that the letter is inadmissible as evidence and demands she return it. Diamond is brought in for questioning and provides an alibi involving someone named Fontana, which catches Morgan's attention. However, before they can dig deeper, an executive from the law firm arrives to report Morgan's unauthorized entry, and Diamond is released. Karadec, frustrated by Morgan's interference, orders her to stay away from the case. At home, Morgan tries to reassure her daughter, who feels overshadowed by her younger, gifted brother and by Morgan herself. Morgan reminds her that she inherited her father's artistic gift and that he didn't truly abandon her. Still, the girl remains doubtful and struggles with her insecurities. The next day, Karadec visits Morgan to ask why she wanted him to push Diamond about Fontana. Morgan reveals that Lynette's sister had also been in Fontana, despite having an alibi. Seeking more clues, Morgan consults her neighbor, a flower expert, asking how long it takes for a ranunculus to wilt. The answer, 4 days. While driving her children to school, Morgan connects the dots. Diamond had an affair with Lynette's sister to gain control over the family in case Lynette turned against him. Morgan recalls seeing a souvenir from Fontana in the sister's home, confirming her suspicions. Morgan presents a new theory. If Diamond and the sister both have alibis for the assumed time of the murder, then the crime must have occurred earlier. They return to the Costa house, where Morgan ties the evidence together. Diamond and Lynette's sister tried to force her off the case, but when her husband intervened with a gun, Diamond shot him. Lynette, the only witness, was tied up. Morgan notices the ranunculus flowers have wilted, since they last about 4 days and were fresh 3 days ago. The murder must have happened 1 day earlier than the police had estimated. While analyzing the scene, Morgan realizes something crucial. The room where the crime occurred is actually a greenhouse. Morgan explains her theory. Diamond manipulated the scene by freezing the body a day early and altering the videos to frame Lynette. He then raised the room temperature to fool the coroner. With Lynette still missing, the investigation turns to Fontana, suspecting Diamond took her there. They find Lynette's childhood home and rescue her, bound inside. With the case closed, Selena offers Morgan a consulting job with the police. Though hesitant, Morgan agrees, but with one condition. "I'll help you," she says, "but first, you have to help me. The father of my first daughter has been missing for 15 years. Find him, and I'll take the job." In the second case, titled Dancers in the Dark, Damien and Roland, two tap dancers, are rehearsing on the rooftop when Damien fatally falls and lands on a car. Meanwhile, it's Morgan's first official day as a consultant for the LAPD, and her children celebrate by making her breakfast. Morgan is quickly called to the crime scene. Karadec is convinced it's a suicide, but Morgan finds a cell phone wedged in a crack, knocked over by a nearby tripod. Dirt marks on the device indicate the presence of a second person, who appears to be left-handed. From the phone, Morgan identifies someone named Christian. Additionally, Morgan points out that Damien loved his car too much to intentionally damage it in a supposed suicide attempt, leading her to suspect it was actually a murder. Elsewhere, the robbery unit seeks Selena's collaboration to solve a series of jewelry store thefts carried out by a hooded thief. During the investigation, Selena finds markings on the rooftop floor, suggesting the second person might have fallen and been injured. Morgan and Karadec visit Whitney, Damien's mother, at the hospital. She mentions that Damien worked at an auto paint shop called BSB, had no enemies, and was saving up to fulfill his Broadway dream. Several of Damien's co-workers from the shop come to see him. Morgan observes that 2 men from the group are left-handed, including Christian Roland, who has a tattoo covering a surgical scar on his elbow. Roland is called in for questioning. During the interrogation, Roland admits that while he and Damien were practicing, a third person pushed Damien. However, security cameras did not capture anyone else. While reviewing documents related to Damien's car, Morgan notices paint traces in the trunk. Knowing how meticulously Damien cared for his vehicle, she deduces that someone from the shop might have hidden inside the trunk, then emerged to attack Damien while he and Roland were rehearsing. Morgan and Karadek head to the shop and interview the workers. Later, at the station, they investigate alibis at their homes. Ava, Morgan's daughter, shows her a painting that prompts Morgan to show her photos of graffiti made by her father. Although Morgan assures Ava that her father didn't abandon them, Ava continues to doubt, struggling with feelings of abandonment. That night, while reviewing the footage, Morgan remembers how her husband paid special attention to lighting. Along with Karadek, they return to the rooftop, where Morgan explains that Damien's car passed in front of the cameras at 2 a.m., and the moonlight was so bright that the culprit couldn't tell Damien from Roland. They realize that Roland was the real target, not Damien. They try to locate Roland, who was at a party. Using the background music from the recordings, Morgan manages to find him, but they arrive too late. Roland has been shot and killed. At the station, they review footage from the club, where Morgan detects the flash from the gunshot. She later notices the same flash in the jewelry store robbery footage. Upon analysis, she realizes the weapon used in both crimes is old. It's the same gun. The team connects the robberies to the murders, and Morgan suggests that the thief used a different car for each getaway, except in the most recent heist. She proposes that Roland may have been an accomplice of the thief, but after meeting Damien, he switched sides, prompting the criminal to eliminate him. The LAPD arrests a worker from the shop while he is attempting a robbery. He is confirmed to be one of the suspects. Morgan explains that the thief synchronized his heists with fake backup calls to distract the police. The LAPD sets a trap using a fake backup call and is able to capture the culprit. Morgan had also detected his involvement at the auto shop. The case is thus closed. Later, Morgan receives her payment and recovers her car, which greatly delights her children. Selena reports that Ava's father's car was found abandoned, with a box of diapers inside, suggesting that he did leave his family, though something likely happened to him. Selena promises to investigate further. In the third case, titled The Climber Killer, a man is found drowned in the bathtub, and his killer is unknown. When Morgan arrives at the scene the next day, she finds Karadek already investigating, who challenges her to prove that the scene was tampered with to hide a homicide. Morgan quickly analyzes the room and detects unusual details: scratches on the floor, a poorly folded towel, something strange for a professional cleaning, and a clean glass of whiskey. Everything points to a hurried cleanup after a fight. She argues that the poorly folded towel was used to dry the floor after a fight. The bartender confirms that the last time they saw the victim, he was accompanied by a blonde woman. They review CCTV footage showing that woman leaving the hotel room where the victim was alone. They also notice that her car was parked in a prohibited zone but did not receive a ticket, something allowed only for doctors in emergencies. The doctor is summoned to testify and admits to having a casual relationship with the victim. Karadek is convinced of her guilt, but Morgan does not believe it. She recalls the candles found in the room. Candles like those last about 4 hours, but one had been extinguished, probably by water spilled during the fight. The other had only been burning for an hour and a half. This indicates that the fight happened much later than the time the doctor said she left, which disproves her alibi. Therefore, the real killer is still free. Meanwhile, Selena continues investigating Roman's disappearance and locates an old mural painted by him. Back at the station, Karadek's team makes a shocking discovery. The victim had assumed a false identity and was not who he claimed to be. That night, Morgan decides to take the box with evidence home, which leads Karadek to visit her and warn that she is violating protocols. While examining the documents, she shares her hypotheses with him. Looking at the victim's pants, she notices they are made with great precision. Upon closer inspection, she observes a particular detail in the stitching. There are no cross stitches, typical of tailors in Madagascar, who believe those stitches bring bad luck. She also discovers cement residues on the shoes, indicating the victim had been near a construction site. Guided by this clue, the team locates a tailor's workshop near a construction area and uncovers the victim's true identity. Eduardo. Although he worked as a driver for a ride-sharing platform, his lifestyle did not match that job. Visiting his home, they meet his wife and daughter, who mentions two objects her father gave her: a toy camera and a dictionary. She also reveals they lived in a luxurious apartment, far beyond the economic level a driver like Eduardo could afford. In a tense moment at home, Morgan confronts her ex-partner, upset that he allowed Ava to bring a boy to the house. The argument ends with him sarcastically saying, "I'm just the babysitter," and walking away. The next day, Morgan connects a crucial piece. The killer entered the hotel room through the window, which is problematic because the room is on the 4th floor. Detective Oz inspects the place and finds typical climber's dust. He also notices that the building's structure has cracks and support points that an experienced climber could use to climb the wall. Daphne investigates Eduardo's finances and discovers a $200,000 deposit made by an elderly woman in a senior care facility. She suffers from dementia and is convinced that Eduardo was her fiancé and that she gave him the money to build a house in Mexico. Her son, puzzled, claims he doesn't know Eduardo and that when Eduardo visited his mother, he was out of town. This reveals that Eduardo was committing fraud by exploiting vulnerable people. That same night, Selena arrives with news about Roman's case, showing a mural he painted before disappearing, linked to criminal activities. While they talk, Morgan has a revelation. She returns to Eduardo's house and searches the dictionary the daughter mentioned, finding a hiding place with cash. She also examines photos taken with the toy camera, where a tattoo identifying Eduardo appears. Morgan contacts Karadek to meet at the hotel bar. She asks who has access to wealthy, vulnerable women. Karadek answers the bartender. Morgan shows him the tattoo image. The bartender serving them sees the photo, realizes he is cornered, and runs toward the kitchen, where he tries to grab a knife, but Karadek stops him. After the altercation, Karadek expresses his anger. "You didn't warn me of the danger. I could have been stabbed." A dispute arises between them, and Morgan decides to quit. During the interrogation, the bartender admits that he and Eduardo scammed vulnerable women, but insists he was not the one who killed Eduardo. Back home, Morgan apologizes to her ex, and reflecting on the case, reaches another conclusion. The killer must have had short nails, as he climbed a building. The police visit Kyle's mother, who was wearing a mountaineering club shirt. Kyle is identified as the culprit, the son of the elderly woman Eduardo scammed. His motive was revenge, although something doesn't completely add up. Karadek points out that Kyle never appears in security footage, so how did he access Eduardo's room? The answer is that he had help from the doctor, who opened the window from inside. She had also been a victim of Eduardo's scams. Kyle had warned her before, but she had already given him thousands of dollars. When Kyle is arrested, he says goodbye to his mother via video call. In custody, He and the doctor blame each other for being the mastermind, but both end up responsible. In the fourth case, titled Survival Mode, two girls are found locked in the trunk of a car, clearly indicating a kidnapping. Meanwhile, Morgan has just received her badge as an LAPD consultant. She is in the bathroom celebrating with photos when the girl's mother, Mia, bursts in clearly distressed. The team meets with Mia, daughter of a wealthy hotelier named Ashford, who reports the disappearance of her two daughters. Mia is estranged from her husband Wendell, described by her father as a radical environmentalist, incapable of taking care of the children and wanting to live outside conventional society. Wendell is a suspect, as he was about to lose custody of the girls after being deemed unstable by Child Protective Services. Morgan and Karadek visit Wendell's isolated cabin, where they find one of the girls' teddy bears and survival books Wendell had bought for them. Morgan notices a greenhouse with plants arranged irregularly, cucumbers and tomatoes together, something strange for someone with his knowledge. This leads to the discovery of Wendell's body buried underground, estimated to have been dead for about 12 hours. They inform Mr. Ashford of Wendell's death and discover he was seen arguing with a long-haired, red-headed woman the day he died. Morgan talks to the cleaning staff at the Ashford residence, who defends Wendell and says she saw him leaving Ashford's office. Morgan reviews the CPS report about the custody dispute and detects numerous contradictions. It mentions Wendell fed his children junk food, but his garden produces fresh vegetables. It accuses Wendell of not providing proper education, but the cabin is full of books. Suspicion falls on the red-headed social worker responsible for the report. In the interrogation, she defends herself, but Morgan points out financial inconsistencies. She has little cash, but recently traveled to Kuwait. Morgan also notices a plant souvenir on her wall and slippers with a logo linking her to the Ashford family. The social worker finally admits she was bribed by Mia's father to falsify a report. She also reveals that Wendell had evidence of illegal hotel construction pushed by Mr. Ashford in environmentally protected areas and planned to report it. Despite this, the social worker denies any involvement in the kidnapping. Mr. Ashford is arrested. Although initially his driver provides an alibi, claiming they were together the night before, he later confesses he lied and does not know Ashford's whereabouts. At the station, Ashford admits to having paid someone to take care of Wendell, but insists he did not intend for it to end in murder. He explains that Wendell was about to reveal his bribery to a judge who had authorized a trip to the Maldives to facilitate construction in the protected area. The hired man is detained, but the girls remain missing. This man says he withdrew from the plan after witnessing a fight between Mia and Wendell, which shifts suspicion back to Mia. The team considers that Mia might have killed her husband, although Morgan defends her innocence. They fail to locate Mia at her home. Affected by the case, Morgan hugs her daughter and kisses her son. While watching the news, she notices in a photo of the missing girls that the mink coat has been replaced. She realizes Mia has been selling an old piece belonging to her mother to raise money for a ransom. Morgan manages to find Mia in an antique shop trying to sell the mink coat. Mia explains she was instructed not to involve the police after receiving a ransom demand. She also mentions she begged Wendell not to report her father and denies killing him. Morgan contacts Karadek, and both try to intercept the kidnapper during the ransom exchange, but he escapes without leaving any clues about the girls. While inspecting the kidnapper's abandoned vehicle, Morgan hears a radio transmission about a bet and remembers seeing Ashford's driver when they visited the mansion. She realizes the driver had parked the car in a place that allowed him to watch Mia's room. She deduces that the driver, in love with Mia, planned the kidnapping to then rescue the girls and win her affection. Under pressure, the driver admits responsibility claiming Wendell didn't deserve Mia. He reveals that the girls had escaped early that morning and took refuge in the forest. A search is organized, and the girls are found safe, having survived thanks to the survival skills Wendell taught them. The episode ends with Morgan and Karadec sharing a moment of camaraderie, and Morgan finally resting and returning home with a sense of closure. In the fifth case, titled Stiff as a Toad, a veterinarian arrives at the clinic for his night shift and finds Dr. Monica dead, with the word murder written on a piece of paper. Meanwhile, Morgan is at home preparing breakfast when Ava chokes on some juice. Morgan asks what happened, and Ava replies it was just juice. When Morgan and her team arrive at the crime scene, just as Karadec is about to wash his hands, Morgan stops him and throws a tranquilizer dart to save his life. She then explains that the victim had an allergic reaction on the palms of her hands, and that there was a paper towel nearby. The veterinarian specialized in exotic animals, and Morgan had noticed that a poison dart frog was missing. She deduces that the frog was inside the soap dispenser, which caused the doctor to become paralyzed when drying her hands with the paper towel. Before dying, the doctor managed to have the printer emit the word murder with its automated voice. The team finds the dead frog inside the dispenser. Morgan and Karadec interrogate Bethany, who called the police to report Monica's disappearance. Although Bethany knows little, her son Gavin recounts that a man recently shouted at Monica and provides a description. Monica's family is called, and her parents confess to being estranged from her for 12 years. They show a photo of the bearded man, and the father says it was the worst experience they have had. The man is Shane, Monica's ex-boyfriend when she was 16. Shane stole from a store wearing sandals and was arrested for armed robbery. He is interrogated, but having worn an ankle monitor for a month rules him out as a suspect. Meanwhile, Morgan worries at home about the incident with Ava, thinking she might be using drugs. She checks Ava's room and finds pills that look like birth control, but decides to wait before confronting her. Later, the team questions an online stalker of Monica, who claims she incinerated his pet spider without permission and threatened him with her Hollywood address. Morgan remembers that address after seeing a food receipt in Monica's apartment trash. When they visit, they discover more exotic animals, confirming Monica was also trafficking illegal species. Morgan finds a photo of Bethany and her son Gavin in Monica's office, as well as a coded list that turns out to be abbreviations of houses. Monica needed money to buy a house and wanted to live near her partner, Bethany, who has a husband and son. Bethany admits that her husband Nathan knew about her plans to leave him for Monica. Nathan is called to testify. The team finds a book about frogs with a coffee stain on a page. Nathan admits to killing Monica, but Morgan doubts the sincerity of his confession. Morgan and her children visit the store Shane robbed, and something fits. How did Monica's father know Shane wore sandals? That detail wasn't in police reports. Morgan visits Shane at the beach, where he works as a gym instructor, and notices he has dimples on his ears matching those of Bethany's son. She then informs Karadec that Gavin, Bethany's adopted son, is actually the biological son of Shane and Monica, since both have those dimples, a genetic trait. Monica's teenage pregnancy explains why Shane didn't reveal his involvement in the robbery and why she was estranged from her parents, especially her father, who was ashamed. Morgan concludes that Bethany discovered Gavin was Monica's biological son and realized Monica preferred Gavin over her. Bethany confesses to killing Monica out of anger, understanding that her marriage was destroyed by Monica, whose relationship was a lie. Bethany overheard an argument between Shane and Monica, where Shane asked why she had given Gavin up for adoption. That's when Bethany understood the truth. Nathan confessed to the crime to protect Gavin and was released. Finally, Monica's mother learns that Gavin is her grandson. Back home, Morgan talks to Ava about the pills and is surprised to learn she was using them to treat her acne. In the sixth case, titled Hangover, a young woman named Sam wakes up with a hangover in her boss Elaine's trashed office, finding her dead with the word forever written on the wall. Morgan is cleaning when Karadec calls her to investigate the murder at Tech Corp, where Elaine was killed with her own Female Innovator Award during the launch party of a product called Canary. Sam, who claims to drink little and is on a new medication, is the main suspect. She confesses that Elaine had become difficult, especially after the launch. Her laptop shows a strange search from the previous night, attributed to her drunkenness. In a notebook, there is a drawing of Sam with a knife behind Elaine. Despite appearances, Morgan believes in her innocence. Elaine's husband, Eric, reveals he was her first investor and that Elaine had enemies in the company. He left the party at 10 p.m. Meanwhile, Tom, an LAPD janitor, accuses Morgan of leaving stains, hinting at a romance. The toxicology report shows diazepam and alcohol in Sam's system, possible causes of amnesia. Daphne discovers that Elaine wrote a check for $45,600 the night of the crime. Guests report a loud argument in the office, usual given Elaine's character. Morgan narrows down the time of death using the karaoke playlist. The argument ended at 11:01 p.m. No one heard anything during the next song, so the death occurred between 10:58 and 11:01 p.m. Sam finds photos where Elaine is altered to look like a demon. In the images, there is red lipstick matching another employee, Denise, who admits to flirtatiously kissing Sam at the party. Denise saw an unknown woman with brown hair and a square object on her arm, identified as Carmen Jimenez, who uses an insulin pump. When visiting Carmen, she initially denies everything. Morgan notices they just moved into a house they cannot afford. During the interview, Morgan observes bruises on her knuckles, leading Karadec to interrogate her. It is discovered that Medcare, Elaine's company, was bribing Carmen and paying her mortgage. Daphne writes down notes as Morgan realizes Sam's strange search was a coherent phrase typed on a misaligned keyboard. The correct search was PFAS lungs, referring to chemicals that cause lung diseases, explaining the word forever written on the wall. Morgan confronts Carmen, asking if Medcare was paying her to silence information about harm to children, including Carmen's son. Morgan suspects that Carmen's anxiety about her son's safety pushed her beyond her emotional limits. Carmen admits that worry consumed her, and guilt drove her to act impulsively. That's how she decided to go to the party, where she became angry seeing people celebrating, unaware of what she was suffering. Then she went to Elaine's office, where she saw the word forever written on the wall. In a fit of frustration, she stabbed a stuffed animal there, hurting her hand. Elaine entered at that moment and threatened Carmen with legal action if she said anything. Although Carmen had planned to harm Elaine, she lost the courage and ended up hitting a photo before leaving. She insists Elaine was alive when she left the office. Morgan starts doubting Elaine's version that she was helping her niece with a product linked to her company. At that moment, Tom, the janitor, appears, and Morgan uses him to question Elaine's sudden switch to traditional Chinese medicine when her expertise was in Western medicine. She also points out that Elaine has no photos of that niece, while Tom has many pictures of his nephew. They hypothesize that Na, Elaine's ex-assistant, who is interested in Chinese medicine and has a daughter, could be the true creator of the product prototype, and that Elaine took credit to profit. Karadec interrogates Na about the alleged appropriation of her idea. Na admits to being the original author, but says Elaine paid her and liked the result, though she criticizes Elaine's arrogant lifestyle. Morgan, observing with Selena, notices Na's smiling expression suggests sincerity. Na also recounts the brutal way Elaine was murdered using her own trophy. Karadek, aware that only Eric knows how Elaine died, asks Na if she has a relationship with Eric. Na confesses she does, saying it started accidentally while they argued over Canary. Suspicion focuses on Sam, though Morgan defends her. Morgan mentions an unresolved mystery, a check for $45,623. This causes Sam to feel sick and vomit. She then confesses to Morgan that the amount corresponds to the final balance of her student loan and understands this incriminates her in Elaine's death and ruins her life. While analyzing the case, Morgan recalls that Sam mentioned Elaine's paranoia and extreme surveillance. This leads her and Karadek to inspect Elaine's office, where they discover a one-way mirror hiding a camera behind the desk. The video shows Sam telling Elaine about her resignation and her reasons. Elaine tried to bribe her, but when she failed, a physical fight broke out in which Elaine attacked Sam. In self-defense, Sam struggled until Elaine fell onto her trophy, dying instantly. Sam suffered a blow to the head and lost consciousness. Karadek concludes Sam acted in self-defense and will likely not face severe charges. At the end of the day, Selena invites Morgan out for a drink. Although Morgan hesitates at first, she accepts. Before leaving cleverly, she leaves her phone number for Tom, the janitor, using chip dust hidden in a display case. In the seventh case, titled One of Us, Frank Weber is found dead in his RV after being missing for a week. Morgan brings her daughter, Ava, to the police station. While Ava uses the restroom, a woman takes Lieutenant Mellon hostage, warning that a nearby box is a bomb and that there are more explosives hidden throughout the station. She has an accomplice who disarms an officer. They demand everyone's phones and weapons and order Detective Daphne to evacuate the building, leaving only the hostages with them. They disable the security cameras and explain their demand to free a man they claim was wrongly accused. They insist the police find the real culprit, threatening to kill everyone if they fail. Those not held hostage, such as Selena, Karadek, and Osman, meet with the SWAT team at the command center. They identify the kidnappers as military veterans, Sergeant Brooke Kirkman and Sergeant Jeremy Davis, both without criminal records. They try to understand how explosives were smuggled in and how to negotiate the crisis. The kidnappers demand the release of Sergeant Logan Hansen, claiming his innocence in Frank Weber's murder, and force Lieutenant Mellon to relay this message to Selena. Although Selena believes Detective Lavalle's investigation was thorough, she orders Hansen to appear. Lavalle explains that Hansen faces a long sentence for killing Weber, a retired master sergeant and military trainer. Weber was killed with his own weapon in the RV. Hansen's fingerprints were found on the weapon, which had traces of acetone, just like Hansen's remodeling project. A waiter witnessed a tense argument between Hansen and Weber the night before the crime. Hansen claimed he was home with his girlfriend Brooke, who confirmed his alibi. Lavalle suggests the motive could be that Weber denied Hansen an overseas post, which might have triggered the murder. Hansen admitted to handling the weapon at a shooting range with Weber, explaining the fingerprints. Despite the evidence, the kidnappers insist Hansen is innocent, and the SWAT leader believes lethal force may be necessary. Lieutenant Mellon insists the investigation was exhaustive and confirms Hansen's guilt. However, Morgan notices a detail in the blood splatter. A perfect angle indicates an object was moved at the scene. She suspects a paper was displaced and, with the kidnapper's permission, calls Karadek for assistance. During the call, Karadek realizes Ava is at the station and alerts Selena, who sends officers to find her. Morgan asks Karadek to check the RV for the missing paper. Accessing Weber's laptop, Karadek discovers the last printout was a DD-458 form used to initiate a discharge process. Brooke argues that Logan was an exemplary soldier and couldn't be the one Weber planned to discharge. Tension rises when Jeremy finds Ava and threatens her with a gun. Morgan intervenes and Tom protects her, but Brooke orders everyone to sit down to calm the situation. Karadec interviews Lauren, Frank's daughter, who reveals that despite Frank's closeness to the soldiers, he didn't talk about disciplinary issues. Lauren mentions that Frank canceled a usual dinner on Monday without explanation. Karadec reports that Frank's phone might reveal where he was that day. Morgan reports that Frank searched for an address near Pershing Square at 5:47 p.m., an area known for high crime. 40 minutes later, he searched for a private detox center, despite not using drugs or alcohol, suggesting he might have taken someone to rehab. Karadec tries to get information from the center, but is blocked, suspecting the patient might be a criminal. Osman requests support from the Attorney General. In the hostage room, Jeremy grows increasingly nervous. Brooke tries to calm him and remind him to stick to the plan. Jeremy suspects the police are planning something. Suddenly, Mellon attacks Jeremy to disarm him. Brooke shouts for everyone to stop, raising the detonator. Tom assists Mellon but is shot in the leg. SWAT is ready to enter, but Karadec hesitates, fearing the bomb. A fallen camera shows Tom on the floor, apparently still. Just as Selena is about to order entry, Tom moves. Morgan and Daphne attend to Tom, who has an artery damaged by the bullet. They struggle to stop the bleeding, while Morgan warns Brooke that Tom will die in 15 minutes without proper medical care. She reveals she knows Brooke is pregnant, explaining Logan's refusal to accept the overseas mission. Hearing this, Jeremy feels betrayed and deeply hurt. Brooke confirms that she and Logan are trying to conceive a child. Meanwhile, Karadec locates a store employee who recalls a blonde man matching the description. Logged at 8:36 a.m. security cameras confirm this, showing a person wearing a field jacket, although their face is hidden. Selena shares the image, but Jeremy is frustrated by the low resolution, suspecting the authorities are slowing down the investigation. Brooke tries to calm him. Morgan promises to continue the investigation, but stresses that Tom must be hospitalized immediately. Brooke orders Ava to accompany Tom to get him out safely. Meanwhile, Brooke and Jeremy argue over what steps to take, with Jeremy accusing Brooke of losing resolve. Morgan notices Frank's phone has no recent calls or messages and wonders how he knew where to pick someone up. Upon checking, she finds a receipt confirming Frank bought an AirTag 2 weeks earlier. Morgan deduces Frank used the device to track a soldier suspected of drug use, verifying his location at a known drug sale point. Frank likely placed the AirTag on the soldier to monitor him. Morgan warns the culprit may still have the AirTag. The device's location history shows it was inside Frank's RV at the time of the murder and now is at the residence of Ben Spola, an Army reservist with temporary service in Los Alamitos. Ben Spola is arrested, found with drugs and the AirTag. Brooke feels relieved, thinking Logan will soon be freed. However, everything takes a sudden turn when Jeremy attacks Brooke, rendering her unconscious, and seizes the bomb detonator. He forces Daphne to call Lieutenant Solo, demanding negotiations to avoid detonating the bomb. Morgan responds calmly, explaining that all plastic explosives manufactured since 1991 contain a detectable device, and since trained dogs did not react, the bomb is a hoax. Additionally, Morgan reasons that Brooke, being pregnant, could not have tolerated the toxic chemicals required to make a real explosive. Taking advantage of this revelation, Daphne knocks Jeremy down. He repeatedly tries to activate the detonator, but it proves fake. Morgan meets with Ava, promising to reschedule the special day they had planned. Brooke apologizes to Morgan, who admits feeling relieved that Logan is free. Meanwhile, Tom recovers in the hospital, enjoying pudding and sharing a quiet moment with Morgan. Back at the station, Morgan receives a warm welcome, with applause and a new desk for her. Although Lieutenant Mellon avoids direct praise, he promises to stop calling her the cleaning lady, a small but meaningful victory for Morgan. In the 8th case, called Obsession, a woman is found unconscious on the beach. Morgan is called to meet the detectives at the scene. The unknown woman has a blunt head trauma and is presumed dead. Although they suspect homicide, Morgan is not convinced. She asks for Detective Karadek's watch and holds it near the woman's face. The watch fogs up, indicating that she is still alive. Back at the station, Morgan explains to Osman that this is the Lazarus effect, a phenomenon where blood circulation spontaneously returns after a failed resuscitation attempt. Karadek identifies the victim as Heather Wallace, a 27-year-old graduate student reported missing by her boyfriend Morris the previous night. Morris, who is significantly older, is brought in to confirm her identity and claims he was at home that night choosing tiles for his pool. Osman informs Selena and Morgan that Heather is not really Heather nor a graduate student. Her real name is Penny Hall. They go to Penny's apartment, where the landlord describes her as his favorite tenant. He also reveals that her boyfriend, Lucas Phillips, was murdered, and Penny stayed at the apartment for weeks after his death. Morgan notices numerous shoes and expensive clothes, as well as many credit card bills on the table, indicating that Penny was the one paying for these items, not Morris. This is not a sugar daddy relationship gone wrong. While reviewing an investigation board at the residence, Morgan realizes that Penny has been secretly investigating the death of her boyfriend Lucas Phillips, which happened 2 years ago. Penny has assumed a false identity and is now involved with a wealthy man, Morris, to gain access to the yacht club where Lucas worked. The team begins investigating Lucas Phillips's death. Initially, it was thought to be a robbery, but now that the attack on Penny reflects the violence against Lucas, it seems both were victims of the same assailant. Morgan points out details such as rice and hair found on Lucas, and Karadek adds that he had frostbite on the tip of his nose. Morgan and Karadek visit the yacht club. Edward Wilson, the founder's grandson, shows them around the facilities. His brother Blaine joins, and both recognize Penny as someone who used to frequent the club with Morris. They also recognize a photo of Lucas and confirm he was a popular tennis instructor there. During the interview, they receive news that Penny has regained consciousness. She reveals that she was attacked from behind while talking to someone who claimed to know Lucas's killer, so she could not identify the culprit. She says this while touching a diamond necklace Lucas gave her a week before he was killed. Morgan asks about Blaine, and Penny reveals that she had several confrontations with him, who threatened to fire Lucas. Penny had been investigating Blaine, but Edward always defended him, complicating the inquiry. Karadek and Morgan return to the club to question Edward about Blaine. Edward admits that Blaine is not perfect, but insists he would not hurt anyone. He confesses to helping him with rehabilitation and financial problems, but denies covering up a homicide. Morgan notices a woman wearing a necklace identical to the one Lucas gave Penny. It turns out she is Blaine's secret lover, who is married. She gave the original necklace to Lucas to hide their relationship, but kept a copy for herself. This points to the possibility that Blaine killed Lucas. Reviewing the murder board again, Morgan notices that Lucas's time of death is incorrectly calculated. His shorts were wet, but his hair was dry, indicating the tide never reached the place where the body was found. He was likely killed elsewhere, and then dumped on the beach. Unable to clear her mind of the case, Morgan decides to visit Karadek during the night. Together, they work until dawn to connect the pieces of the puzzle. At one point, Morgan catches a crucial detail. The murder weapon turns out to be a snowball. She finds rice residue in Lucas's hair, used to make the snow, and traces of antifreeze in his system, employed to prevent the snowballs from freezing inside the body. Meanwhile, Edward has memories of his trips with Blaine, except for Grease. Morgan concludes that Lucas had threatened to expose Blaine's vices, drug use, infidelities, and fraud, to Edward, who decided to kill him to protect his brother. He also tried to kill Penny. The police head to the club, but Edward flees toward a nearby cliff, accompanied by Blaine. Eventually, authorities manage to persuade him to surrender and arrest him. Morgan shares dinner with Tom. They connect deeply, and he confesses he enjoys her company. At that moment, Selena interrupts to inform her that Roman was in contact with Gio, a janitor who provides items to both legal and illegal people. Selena locates Gio and brings him in for questioning. In the 9th case, called The Rams, Karadec calls Morgan to attend the scene of another crime. Although her baby is crying, Morgan decides to bring him along, which causes Karadec to worry about who is taking care of the child. The victim is Marvin Price, a well-known sports commentator. A witness claims that Price was hit by a car twice, suggesting an intentional murder. Morgan quickly analyzes the scene and determines that the vehicle involved is a blue Malaga Jensen Interceptor. They soon find the abandoned car, confirming her hypothesis. Dexter, Price's son, arrives at the station and reveals that he spoke on the phone with his father shortly before the murder. During the call, Price mentioned he planned to change his will. Dexter reports that the house manager, Tiana Johnson, was recently named the sole beneficiary, although his father intended to change it in his favor. He believes this change in the will is a possible motive. He also mentions that his father's last words were "tiddlywinks." Meanwhile, Morgan's personal relationship with Tom faces difficulties. Tom has just graduated from nursing school and received a job offer in San Diego. After several unanswered calls, he thinks Morgan has lost interest. She insists she has been busy and tries to reconcile, but the distance threatens to complicate their bond. Detectives Osman and Daphne interview Price's neighbor, who admits to disliking Price because of legal disputes, but provides a solid alibi for the time of the crime. Morgan and Karadec question Tiana, who denies being Price's lover and says he was like a father to her. She also suggests investigating Dexter, as he was upset about the will and often asked his father for money. Tiana insists she was home at the time of the murder and that her relationship with Price had no financial motives. Leaving her house, Karadec catches Morgan trying to steal Tiana's phone. He scolds her and orders her to return it, reminding her of the legal consequences of stealing evidence. Morgan and Selena meet with Gio. However, Gio will only provide information if they help release his nephew from prison and enroll him in a rehabilitation program. The next day, Dexter returns to the station and mentions he has financial problems due to the expenses of caring for his autistic stepdaughter. He explains that his father refused to support him, straining their relationship. Selena asks Karadec for help negotiating with Gio, who is indebted after securing his nephew's release. Daphne uncovers a key fact. Price's neighbor owns a Jensen Interceptor, the car linked to the murder. However, the neighbor says it was stolen a week ago, and a police report confirms it. He also recounts seeing a man entering Price's garage when he was not home. That man turned out to be Tiana's boyfriend. He adds that Price unexpectedly arrived and surprised the boyfriend in his garage, and that the boyfriend quickly fled on his motorcycle. Morgan reviews Price's recordings and notices he frequently used the expression "tiddlywinks" to refer to something useless or a waste of time. The detectives check cameras to establish a timeline. Suddenly, before anyone else speaks, Morgan reveals the culprit's identity. while accidentally holding Tiana's phone. A call comes through from Hollywood Auto, a mechanic shop capable of hot wiring vehicles. Analyzing the footage, the culprit wears a specific type of French sneakers. A visible brick wall allows Morgan to estimate the mechanic's height at 1.95 meters, 6 feet 5 inches. A web search of Hollywood Auto shows a photo of a tall, attractive mechanic named Olivier Dees. Morgan suggests that after learning about the motorcycle, Price caught Tiana and Olivier in an intimate situation. Price told Tiana he would remove her from the will. In response, Olivier stole the neighbor's car to frame him. The detectives locate the boyfriend at a workshop. When confronted, he tries to escape, but Karadec stops him. Tiana is questioned again. Olivier claims he was with Tiana, which she initially agrees to in order to protect him, but later admits she lied because her visa had expired. She confirms Price knew about the relationship and told her Olivier was a waste of time. At that moment, Morgan connects the last piece. Price was trying to warn his son that Tiana's boyfriend was responsible for his death. Tiddlywinks symbolizes that warning. Olivier is formally charged. Later, Tiana renounces any claim to the inheritance, leaving it entirely to Dexter. Afterward, Gio picks up Morgan at a mall and asks to speak alone without her colleagues. He reveals that Roman disappeared because he feared for his family. Morgan doubts him until Gio mentions the Rams, the nickname Roman used for his family, Roman, Ava, and Morgan, confirming Joe's credibility. He tells her he will leave town, but will return to share more about Roman when he decides. Now, the intrigue revolves around the reasons that led Roman to disappear 15 years ago. In the 10th case, called Dumpsters and Murders, a body is found in a playground. The local nannies recognize the victim as Tara Foley, a fellow nanny who frequented the area. The medical examiner concludes that Tara's cause of death was a severe head trauma. It appears she was attacked nearby and, trying to escape, crawled to the playground slide. With no surveillance cameras in the area and the approximate time of death estimated at 10 p.m., the investigators have few leads to follow. The nannies who frequent the park mention the presence of an unknown man lingering around who seemed to have a particular interest in Tara. Inspecting the victim's phone, Morgan finds 8 missed calls from Brett, her employer, along with a voicemail in an annoyed tone. Brett and his husband Jeff explain that Tara had been taking care of their son Ward for 4 months and remember her as a sweet and attentive person. Brett insists he would never have left a hostile message if he had known she was in danger. Jeff provides an important detail. Tara had told them that a man with a limp and a French newspaper under his arm was constantly following her. Morgan quickly deduces where to find copies of French newspapers and, together with Karadec, tracks down the man in question. He turns out to be a retired LAPD officer who now works as a private investigator. The question arises, who hired him? To the detective's surprise, it was Brett, who did not inform Jeff. This was because their previous nanny, Rosa, was fired after a Facebook post accused her of letting Ward wander the streets. Similarly, after public accusations of negligence against Tara, Brett decided to hire an investigator to protect his family, although Tara insisted everything was unfounded. Karadec and Morgan visit Karina, the woman who posted the complaint against Rosa. She admits to having made that post, but denies any involvement in the accusations against Tara. She explains that she was a victim of online harassment after that post, which led her to close her account. When searching Tara's apartment, the detectives find signs of financial problems, a pepper spray bottle, and a business card for an immigration lawyer. Additionally, Tara's calendar shows she planned to attend Mass on the night she was killed. Meanwhile, Osman, Chuck, the private investigator, and Morgan examine photos of Tara with Mark, who appears to have a very close relationship with her. In one picture, Mark is holding a bat. That could be the murder weapon. However, he claims they were just friends, and that on the night of the crime, he was at home organizing a book club, proving the bat was plastic and showed no signs of violent use. The investigators suspect Tara knew her attacker. They reinterrogate the other nannies, who finally admit that Tara earned less than they did per hour, only about $10 less. And although they tried to offer help, Tara never accepted. They believe that if she had accepted help, she wouldn't have been alone that night. They also mention that Karina had a public confrontation in the park with Tara and Mark, although her alibi was confirmed by security footage. Then Daphne brings a crucial detail. The Facebook accounts posting negative messages about Tara were fake. Karina clarifies that her argument with Mark had nothing to do with Tara, but was about buying wood for a deck. She laughs at the idea that she was jealous of the nanny and recalls that she only made one post before deactivating her account. Morgan connects the dots and realizes it was the nannies who created those fake accounts, taking advantage that during story time at the library, they didn't watch the kids and could post without being detected. They harassed Karina after she reported Rosa and then turned on Tara for taking Rosa's place and working for a lower salary. Morgan notices the children's lunchboxes have Spice Girls stickers. Rosa was Sporty Spice, and Tara refused to use her predecessor's lunchbox. Morgan's attention turns to Oksana, another nanny of Russian origin. The fake posts use writing patterns typical of Russian, such as not capitalizing the days of the week. Also, Tara's calendar marked a religious event called the Exaltation of the Cross for 7 p.m. on September 27th, but Catholics celebrate that on the 14th, indicating Tara planned to attend Oksana's church, not her own. Thus, Morgan reconstructs the story. Tara discovered Oksana was the one harassing her online and planned to confront her at church. Oksana, fearing Tara would get her deported for using a false identity, decided to kill her. The other nannies, pressured, admit they protected Oksana out of fear. Oksana confesses her family was persecuted in Russia and that she would rather go to prison in the United States than be deported. With the case closed, Morgan meets Jeff in the park and gives him a photo of Tara with Ward, showing the affection she felt for the child. Jeff is moved by the image. As Morgan watches her own children playing, she becomes aware of how quickly time passes. In the 11th case, called The Sauna at the End of the Stairs, George Donovan makes a shocking confession on his deathbed. He admits to having killed his son-in-law, Barry Johnson, a decade ago by pushing him down the basement stairs. This crime, known as the Bucket Lane murder, was highly publicized but was never solved. Barry's body was found severely burned in a sauna, but the autopsy revealed that the true cause of death was a cervical fracture. A bloodstain from Barry was found on George's shirt, although that was not enough to convict him. The defense mentioned another suspect, Billy Rose, a cocaine dealer who was in the area the night of the crime. Despite suspicions, there was no definitive conclusion. Selena, one of the original detectives on the case, always doubted George's guilt. After his confession, she suspects that he took the blame to clear his family's name and protect someone else. Morgan dedicates hours to analyzing photos from the scene and concludes that Barry was not pushed down the stairs, but was killed in the communal bathroom on the upper floor. She reconstructs the event. The murderer heard Barry in the shower and decided to use a hairdryer to electrocute him, intending for it to look like a heart attack. However, the outlet caught fire, leaving evidence of an intentional crime. To cover their tracks, the killer moved Barry's body and dropped it down the laundry chute, causing the fatal neck fracture. This explains why Barry's blood appeared on George's shirt, which was in the laundry room. In the end, the killer decided to move Barry's body to the sauna to further hide the true cause of death. Morgan presents her hypothesis to the team, noting that the bathroom outlet was replaced shortly after the crime. Selena is initially skeptical, pointing out that modern hairdryers have safety systems to prevent electrical accidents, but Morgan counters with a key fact. The hairdryer seen in the crime scene photos was an old model from the 1980s, without those protections. Along with Karadec, Morgan visits the Donovan mansion to confirm their findings. There, they find burn marks near the bathroom outlet and conduct a test by dropping a doll down the laundry chute, which ends up in the basement with injuries similar to Barry's. This evidence strengthens Morgan's theory. At the police station, NEA Donovan, Clark Donovan's ex-wife, arrives accompanied by a documentary team, showing interest in leveraging the case. She warns Daphne and Elle that the Donovan family will do everything possible to protect each other, making it difficult to uncover the truth. During the family interrogation at the mansion, it is confirmed that there were strong tensions between Barry and George, especially after a dinner where Barry ridiculed George for always asking for money. After the argument, Barry left the table, but the real conflict was revealed at the station when NEA disclosed that during that same dinner Barry physically abused his wife Heather. Heather's burned robe and visible bruises, which her mother had noticed, uncovered years of domestic violence. The family confronted Barry that night, after which he left the room. An important piece of information emerges when NEA mentions having seen Billy, the known cocaine dealer, near the residence that same night, confirming his presence at the scene and pointing him out as the new main suspect. Morgan gathers all the clues, but struggles to identify the real culprit. At that moment, Captain Cost arrives at the mansion intending to close the investigation, upset that Selena continued investigating a closed case. However, during his intervention, Morgan has a revelation. The true murderer was Cody Donovan, Barry's son. She explains that Cody, who was only 15 at the time, was aware of his father's abuse. After the family confrontation that night, Cody decided to end Barry's life. He electrocuted him in the shower and then dropped the body down the laundry chute to simulate an accident. He then calmly returned to the dining room to play Monopoly with the rest of the family, ensuring an alibi. The captain expresses disbelief that a teenager could have planned and executed such a sophisticated murder, but Morgan replies that Cody was not an ordinary youth. He was a prodigy recruited by MIT, with the intelligence and capability to carry out the crime. The family initially refuses to accept this version, but Cody eventually confesses. He explains that guilt consumed him, and that a week before he had confessed to his grandfather George his intention to turn himself in, but it was George who took the blame. Cody is taken into custody. Since he was a minor at the time of the homicide, it is likely he will serve less than 3 years in prison. The family is shattered by the revelation. Before leaving, the captain warns Selena not to act again without informing him, although he acknowledges Morgan's instincts were correct. The episode ends with Morgan returning home holding a police badge, not because she earned it legitimately, but because she bought it at a pawn shop. In the 12th case, titled Partners, a man disembarks from his private jet drooling. Morgan is called to the scene, and the victim is identified as Anson Pierce, founder of a controversial social media platform specializing in deepfakes. He was traveling accompanied by his security team, who remained unharmed. The medical examiner suspects the cause of death was poisoning. While the team works the scene, FBI Special Agent Ronnie arrives, claiming jurisdiction because the incident occurred in U.S. airspace. He dismisses LAPD's involvement, considering the poisoning too sophisticated for them. Morgan observes that Anson's broken blood vessels suggest a recent argument. She tries to access the plane to continue the investigation, but Ronnie prevents her and orders Karadec to pull his team out. As they leave, Morgan asks Karadec about Ronnie's attitude. He admits he doesn't like him because he is authoritarian and believes he is never wrong. He also reveals that Ronnie was his partner in the past, but avoids giving further details. At the station, Aizen informs the team that Congress has tried for years to regulate Anson's company due to its technology's potential to spread misinformation, manipulate political processes, and ruin reputations. Ronnie arrives, and his presence causes divided opinions. He announces he will collaborate with Karadec to interrogate witnesses and Anson's family, something Karadec clearly fears. During the interviews, Morgan asks Selena about the past relationship between Karadec and Ronnie. Selena reveals they were a very successful duo before a falling out. A possible injection mark is found on Anson's shoulder, but Morgan questions Ronnie's theory that this is where the poison entered. The medical examiner suspects the toxin is related to anthrax, prompting Ronnie to demand the body be immediately transferred to the FBI. Anson's security team consisted of a former Navy SEAL, a SWAT officer, and a Coast Guard member. All are shocked by the death and worried about the consequences for their careers, since it happened under their supervision. Karadec reviews Anson's detailed calendar and discovers a mysterious 2-hour slot reserved for a meeting in Orange County. The security team is unaware of the meeting's purpose, stating they only accompanied Anson and waited. As Ronnie prepares to leave, he reminds Karadec to transfer the body to the FBI, to which Karadec responds evasively, showing resistance. Morgan intervenes, mentioning a USB memory stick found as evidence that cannot belong to Anson, since he designed a customized drive used only by his company. The USB belongs to a competitor. Upon examining it, the drive installs a virus that cripples the LAPD's computer systems. While Daphne fights the cyber attack, she realizes the person who gave Anson the USB could be the same one who poisoned him. Meanwhile, Oz reviews security footage from Anson's last meeting in Los Angeles. FBI's Ronnie offers satellite imagery support, and Selena assigns Morgan and Karadec to collaborate with him. One FBI profiler theorizes the culprit is a white, unemployed, loner man close to the victim. However, Morgan suggests another possibility, that the crime was committed by someone completely outside Anson's circle, but strongly opposed to his tech company. She firmly believes the murder was a personal act, not a business matter. Soon, a recording surfaces showing a man discreetly placing the USB in Anson's pocket. The FBI identifies him as Simon Coing, who surprisingly matches the initial profile. In interrogation, Simon reveals he is a hacker who acted to protect Anson from his own cybersecurity team. Shortly after, a hooded figure intercepts the forensic van transporting Anson's body. The driver is forced out, and the vehicle is blown up, completely destroying the remains. Ronnie arrives furious over the loss and openly confronts Karadec, but the team, including Selena, backs Karadec. Morgan redirects their focus, noting that the attacker could not have been Simon since he was in custody. Karadec suggests the crime involves multiple people. This leads to another clash with Ronnie, where both accuse each other of withholding information. Karadec proposes a deal. If LAPD cannot make progress with FBI data, they will withdraw from the investigation. Ronnie agrees. Morgan and Karadec access FBI files, and Morgan spends the night organizing information. Though no immediate solution arises, Karadec notices Morgan is obsessed with one name, Kenneth Sutton, a former employee of the California Toxicology Center. Julie Sutton, Kenneth's daughter, committed suicide at 24 after being the victim of a deepfake attack generated by Anson's platform. The FBI had previously interrogated Kenneth, who claimed he only went out on Wednesdays to visit his daughter's grave. Cemetery images confirmed his weekly visits, but a photo taken 2 days before Anson's death showed him wearing gloves, something he hadn't done before. This raises suspicion that the poison might have been hidden among the flowers. Morgan and Karadec find Kenneth's apartment and confront him. During an attempted escape, Kenneth falls down the stairs and dies before they can interrogate him. Inside his home, they discover the 31-second video that destroyed Julie's life. Karadec admits Morgan's intuition about the killer was correct. She describes the mess in the apartment as intentional chaos, where every object had a purpose. The FBI arrives on scene, and Ronnie expresses frustration over being excluded from the operation that led to Kenneth's death. Karadec calmly confronts him, explaining he did not answer his calls. Eventually, they agree to work together. Back at the station, Morgan gets Karadec to admit he misses working with Ronnie. He explains they were a distinguished duo until someone out of envy framed them for bribery. Although it was an accounting misunderstanding, Ronnie left for the FBI, leaving Karadec to deal with the aftermath alone. While analyzing Anson's autopsy images, Karadec detects marks on his body that could indicate intimate relations before death. He suggests Ronnie investigate additional recordings and check the building's rear access, theorizing Anson might have met someone at a nearby hotel. The investigation leads to Aria Vale, an activist fighting for AI regulation and the dissolution of companies like Anson's. Ronnie interrogates Aria and suspects evasiveness. She finally admits their last meeting was tense. Anson was restrained, and a mark on his body came from her earring. Neither Aria nor Simon was near Julie's grave, prompting Morgan to reconsider the clues in Kenneth's apartment. Looking at some books in the photos, she recalls a phrase by Louisa May Alcott: "It takes two flints to make a fire." This reminds her that Parker, one of Anson's guards, had a flint on his keychain, possibly Julie's. Morgan concludes that Parker and Julie were romantically involved, and after her suicide, he and Kenneth plotted revenge. Kenneth developed the poison, impregnated it in a dog collar, and Parker placed it on Anson's dog. The poison would have been absorbed through Anson's skin. The FBI locates Parker just as he attempts to flee on Anson's private jet. Daphne enlists Simon to remotely sabotage the plane, and Parker is captured upon landing. With the case resolved, Ronnie apologizes to Karadec for abandoning him in the past. Later, he offers Karadec a position with the FBI, which Karadec declines. Morgan celebrates that Karadec finally recognizes the importance of their professional bond. Returning home, Morgan finds a surprise, a taco night, and a screening of 2001, A Space Odyssey, Ludo's favorite movie. This gesture reminds her that it is vital to slow down and enjoy the small moments with loved ones. In the 13th case, titled Let's Play, the story begins with a scene where Ludo is teaching Ava how to drive, something that terrifies Morgan. She jokingly tells the officers to write down her license plate and stop her whenever they see her, convinced that her daughter inherited her reckless spirit. At the police station, Lieutenant Selena reminds everyone to confirm their attendance for the police gala, a mandatory event. But everything is interrupted when Karadec receives an alarming anonymous message. A photo shows a man tied to a chair with a sign that reads, 2 hours to make your move. The team is unsure whether it's a real threat or a macabre prank. Oz quickly identifies the man. Spencer Wallace, a lawyer with no close relatives. He and Daphne head to his apartment, where they find an unopened puzzle on the door. Back at the station, Morgan assembles the puzzle and discovers it is a map. One piece is missing, the one pointing to Spencer's location. Following this clue, Morgan and Karadec arrive at the site, where they find cards from the Gamoose Locos hanging from a tree. A message forces them to choose between two paths if they want to save Spencer. Time is running out. Oz and Daphne find out that Spencer is diabetic and could go into a coma without medical attention. Morgan and Karadec progress by solving riddles, including a mathematical one on a hopscotch, which leads them to a storage unit. However, when they enter Spencer's unit, it is completely empty. After an intense search, the team finally locates the missing man in critical condition inside a hospital. He can barely speak, but manages to recount that he was kidnapped by a figure wearing a white anime-style mask who insisted he participate in some games. When he refused, he was knocked unconscious. After hearing his story, Morgan deduces that the kidnapper's goal was not directly him, but to send a twisted message to the Los Angeles Police Department. Later, Morgan stops at a cafe and runs into Gio, who mentions having clues about Roman's disappearance. According to Gio, Roman was terrified before vanishing, and a woman was involved, Layla Flynn. Morgan had never heard the name before. At home, Ava shows Morgan a commemorative album she is putting together for her father, just in case they find him. She also insists on helping Morgan choose the dress she will wear to the upcoming police gala. Meanwhile, Daphne and Oz receive an alert about suspicious activity at the hotel where the gala will be held. Morgan joins them, and they discover an abandoned baby stroller filled with creepy-looking dolls. Among them are Scrabble tiles forming the message, "The fun has just begun." Although no one saw who left it there, Morgan is convinced the perpetrator is nearby, watching them. At the station, the team tries to piece together the clues, but still cannot decipher their meaning. Morgan strongly believes the dolls are communicating something important, though the code remains hidden. Karadec wonders if anyone else, besides the hospitalized man, knew about the storage unit. At that moment, Oz admits he did. Oz explains he belongs to a private group called GRE, for people coping with grief. He lost his father the previous year and, unknowingly, shared that space with Spencer, the victim. Spencer had mentioned the unit in one of the meetings, suggesting the culprit could be part of the group. Daphne and Oz visit the support group. Everyone speaks well of Spencer, but also recalls a member named David, who was obsessed with board games and emotionally devastated after his sister's death. Meanwhile, Morgan tells Karadec and Selena about the connection with Layla Flynn, but Karadec warns her to be careful with Gio and demands she stay alert. Daphne and Oz wait for a forensic artist to help them recreate David's face. During the wait, the group leader becomes anxious over Sierra's absence, a woman who never misses meetings. With a composite sketch of David and a physical description, the team starts to close in. David is about 1.78 m tall, bearded, and fits the profile. Suspecting Sierra might be the next target, Adam and Morgan head to her home. Upon arrival, they notice signs of a struggle. Morgan detects that a bookshelf has been moved. When they turn off the lights, an invisible ink message appears. "You can't count in the dark." Morgan interprets the message as a reference to sign language. Since Sierra is an ASL interpreter, she deduces the dolls in the stroller might be forming a message with their hands. Examining them, she finds the key, Cox 1 Pi, which, when reversed, reveals PX1. This clue leads them to Pico Boulevard, to an old abandoned art gallery. There they find Sierra trapped inside a safe box. A timer shows she has been locked up for over half an hour, and the oxygen is running out. Without SWAT support, due to the distance, Morgan analyzes the paintings on the walls. Each represents a typical children's game from different cultures. Based on the objects depicted, she deduces a numerical sequence, 11057. The combination works, and they manage to save Sierra just in time. Though she is safe, everyone knows the culprit isn't finished. An officer is assigned to guard each GRE member. Daphne stays with Oz. Karadec suggests canceling the police gala, but Selena insists on proceeding. That night, Morgan arrives home to find Ava and Ludo have prepared several outfits for her to choose from. However, Morgan cannot focus on the dresses. Her mind remains trapped in the case. Meanwhile, Karadec asks Ronnie for help investigating Layla Flynn. They discover she was an FBI agent murdered years ago. Interestingly, one of her last cases was directly related to Roman, who disappeared shortly after her death. On the way to the gala, Oz starts his car, but an airbag deploys suddenly, knocking him unconscious. Meanwhile, a masked figure appears at the gala. Selena, Karadec, and Daphne make a flawless entrance, but neither Oz nor Morgan have arrived. Karadec reveals to Selena that Roman was an FBI informant and assures Morgan that he will handle Geo from now on. Tom arrives shortly after and shares an intimate moment with Morgan as they dance. Daphne finds Oz's abandoned car. The airbag is bloodied, and on the seat is an hourglass along with a note that says Marco. Back at the station, the detectives piece together more clues. Daphne notices that each game message has a different font. When arranged, Romana, Haptic Script, Okana, Kill Sans, and Avantgarde, the fonts form the acronym ROCA. Morgan connects it to a familiar name. Roca is an architect, and one of his most famous designs has a pool. The team heads immediately to that house, where they find Oz chained at the bottom. Equipped with scuba gear, but showing no signs of breathing, Karadec rescues him, and Daphne performs CPR until Oz catches his breath. He's alive but weak. Selena warns him not to take such risks again. Forensic experts arrive to inspect the property. They discover it belongs to the Peck's family, whose children were twins. One of them, David, lost his sister when they were 10. The family is distant from him, and apparently, they don't even have recent photos of him. Later, Morgan and her kids are putting groceries away in the car. They talk about possible vacations, while a stranger helps pick up a package that falls. Ava suspects the man is interested in her mother. Back home, Elliot finds a new board game among the bags. Morgan freezes upon seeing a label with crossed-out eyes in the shape of XX and a handwritten warning. "You are the chosen one, Morgan. Let's play again. You and me." Back at the station, the team receives a revelation that changes everything. David, the main suspect, has been admitted to a rehab center for months. That means the real culprit is still free. While everyone tries to process the information, Karadec calls Morgan with a bombshell. Roman is alive, and he knows where to find him. And now, having told you everything about her story, it's time to delve into the mind of Morgan Gillory, the enigmatic consulting detective. Beyond her physical appearance, what truly matters is who she is, how she thinks, how she notices what others overlook, and above all, how she manages to solve cases that many would find impossible. I will talk about her way of acting, her almost supernatural instinct, her manner of connecting pieces that seem not to fit, and also about the weaknesses that make her human, yet no less brilliant. Morgan Gillory has a presence that draws attention not because of ostentation, but due to her authenticity. Her look is simple, almost minimalist, yet full of intention. She wears practical clothing, dark jeans, sturdy boots, neutral t-shirts, and loose jackets that have seen more than one long sleepless night. Her style doesn't aim to impress, but to facilitate movement and accompany her unpredictable routine as a consultant on complex cases. Sometimes she appears somewhat unkempt, as if her mind were so busy solving human puzzles that superficial details have no place. Her hair, often carelessly tied back, and her always alert eyes reveal a woman who observes more than she speaks. Her body language is straightforward and unadorned. She doesn't take the time to please anyone with empty gestures. When she enters a scene, she doesn't need to raise her voice to make her authority felt. Her mere presence, her firm posture, and analytical gaze command respect. What's most interesting is how her clothing and attitude contrast with the LAPD agents around her. While they wear crisp suits, spotless uniforms, or maintain an institutional aesthetic, Morgan moves along a much more personal and chaotic line, hinting that she doesn't see crime or justice from the same perspective. For her, every case is more than a puzzle. It's an emotional network, a symptom of a deeper system that needs to be understood before it is judged. That difference is key. Morgan doesn't want to appear as part of the system. She wants to understand it in order to challenge it from within. Morgan Gillory is a fascinating paradox. She possesses a sharp, almost surgical logic, capable of dissecting the most complex cases with overwhelming clarity. Yet at the same time, that logic is driven by an empathy rarely seen in police environments. She doesn't just seek the who or the how, but above all, the why. She understands that behind every crime there is a wound, an imbalance, a broken story, and that makes her a deeply human analyst. Her intelligence is well above average, giving her a unique worldview. Where others see data, she sees hidden patterns. Where others see suspects, she sees collateral victims of the system. This way of seeing life, rational but emotionally engaged, has earned her as many allies as enemies within the department. Many respect her, but few truly understand her. One of the most powerful driving forces in her life is her love for her children. Although she rarely shows it openly, every decision, every risk she takes, is motivated by the desire to protect them, to create a world where they can grow up without the weight of the past. Even her unconventional lifestyle is designed to balance motherhood with her unwavering desire for justice. Additionally, there is a constant internal struggle to be taken seriously in an environment dominated by rigid structures, male egos, and hierarchical decisions. Morgan doesn't play by the rules, and that makes others uncomfortable. She is often questioned, underestimated, or treated as an outsider. However, far from being discouraged, she turns every obstacle into one more reason to move forward. In the background of all this is Roman, her ex-husband. Although he is not the focus of the cases she solves, her search for him acts as a secondary storyline throughout the entire season. Morgan hasn't fully moved on. Roman disappeared without closing the necessary chapters, and while she solves other people's crimes, she can't help but project her own need for answers onto them. There are moments when her investigations seem to brush against the personal, as if she hopes every clue will bring her a little closer to him. This deep emotional thread adds layers to her personality. The brilliant detective, the fighting mother, the broken woman still waiting to understand why her world shattered. Morgan Gillory possesses an exceptional set of cognitive and emotional abilities that have made her a key member of the LAPD's criminal consulting team. From the very first episode of High Potential, it is revealed that her mind operates at a level different from the rest. Her intelligence quotient IQ has been measured at 160, placing her within the top 0.1% of the population according to the Stanford-Binet scale, which corresponds to a level of genius. But what truly sets her apart is not just that number, but the way she uses her intelligence functionally, practically, and emotionally. Her approach to solving crimes does not follow a straight line. She combines logic, intuition, and an almost instinctive understanding of human behavior. Often, she avoids traditional procedures to dive directly into the seemingly invisible details that turn out to be crucial. One of the pillars of her abilities is her eidetic memory, commonly known as photographic memory, a cognitive phenomenon that allows her to recall images, texts, patterns, and situations with almost absolute precision. For example, she can visualize the complete furniture arrangement of a crime scene days after briefly seeing it, and identify the absence or displacement of a single object as a key clue. This ability also extends to emotional and sensory elements, enabling her to reconstruct not only the what, but the how and the why. She also possesses a hypersensitive observational capacity, very close to what psychology calls selective hyperobservation. She captures microexpressions, subtle changes in body posture, or repetitive gestures that reveal lies, insecurities, or unspoken traumas. Instead of using aggressive interrogation techniques, she usually remains silent, observing and processing until she obtains the truth through what is left unsaid. Her analytical thinking has been described as an algorithmic process. She analyzes cases as if they were statistical models or logical maps. Although she lacks formal training in mathematics or forensic science, her mind structures data into recurring patterns. For example, in one episode, she manages to predict the time and place of a criminal's next appearance by detecting a fractal pattern in the previous victim's locations. This type of reasoning is associated with high performance in what is known as fluid intelligence, the ability to solve new problems without prior knowledge. However, her intelligence goes beyond pure logic. Morgan has a highly developed emotional capacity, what contemporary psychology refers to as high emotional sensitivity or interpersonal intelligence. She can read emotions with astonishing accuracy, perceiving tension, fear, or remorse in the nuances of tone of voice or direction of gaze. This skill, however, can also become a burden. When she connects emotionally with victims or suspects, she tends to become more involved than logic would advise. Nevertheless, all these abilities come with significant challenges. Morgan experiences chronic difficulties with authority and institutional hierarchies. It is not because she is incapable of following rules, but because her mind rejects inefficiency. She often ignores orders when she believes they are wrong or morally ambiguous, which has earned her multiple internal conflicts with superiors. This impulsiveness, combined with her unwavering personal ethics, constantly puts her in professionally risky situations. She also lives under constant internal tension between her role as a single mother and her professional identity. Her mind never rests. Even at home, she continues reviewing case details. This inability to disconnect causes family conflicts, guilt, and progressive mental exhaustion. Her obsession with the truth, which drives and defines her, is also the root of her emotional vulnerability. In summary, Morgan represents a fascinating case of high cognitive abilities with complex implications in daily life. Her obsession with understanding the world makes her not only a brilliant criminal consultant, but also a woman in perpetual conflict with her own limits. The character of Morgan Gillory has been widely praised by both critics and audiences, not only for her narrative impact, but also for what she represents culturally. She deliberately breaks away from the classic stereotype of the cold genius or the hyperrational woman without emotions. Instead, she embodies a form of intelligence that is complex, human, and deeply disruptive at the same time. Her portrayal breaks barriers by depicting a woman with an extremely high IQ, without implying emotional detachment or elitist arrogance. On the contrary, Morgan is chaotic, empathetic, intense, and often vulnerable. This representation has especially resonated with audiences seeking authentic female role models, far removed from the traditional mold of police television. Moreover, it has sparked conversations within academic and neurodivergent communities about how certain traits associated with conditions, such as sensory processing disorder, emotional hypersensitivity, or even undiagnosed traits on the autism spectrum are portrayed, without turning into a label or caricature. This has opened the door to a new kind of representation, subtler, more complex, and above all, more inclusive. Additionally, her struggle to balance motherhood, professional life, and mental health has been seen as a powerful reflection of the reality faced by many women today. Through Morgan, the series has succeeded not only in creating a memorable character, but also in sparking a conversation about the boundaries between genius and humanity. For all these reasons, Morgan Gillory has not only earned a place in the hearts of viewers, but has also become a modern cultural symbol of what it means to be brilliant, empathetic, and deeply real in a world that often doesn't know how to handle exceptional people.